So I think we can get started. It seems like we haven't had any others join in the past few minutes, so um, I'll get us kicked off here. So good evening to all that are online here. To all the ANC commissioners, thank you for joining us tonight. We're here tonight because we are in the beginning stages of doing a text amendment update for the RA-1 residential apartment zone. And so we will ask that you do hold all comments and questions until the end of our presentation. And just so that you know that this meeting is being recorded and will be online and available for viewing to the general public after this meeting and after our second session on Thursday. And so I'll just get us kicked off here. So my name is Shepard Beeman. I am a development review specialist with the Office of Planning. And I am joined by my co-project lead here, Michael Yurkovich, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, as Shepard said, my name is Michael Yurkovich, also a development review specialist here in the Office of Planning.
And as you can see here, we do have two meetings. So if you know anyone who wanted to attend tonight but was unable to, please refer them to our next meeting, which will be held Tuesday at noon. I'm sorry, Thursday at noon, excuse me. Um,
Little typo on our end.
yeah. Um, but yes, Thursday at noon. Date is correct, day is wrong, but yes. And I think you'll have to do the transitions, Michael, because I don't think I can. All right. So, um, as I mentioned, we're being recorded, and again, this will be available for review after this meeting. And so today we're here because we are in the process of reviewing the current RA-1 zone uh, regulations and development standards. And we're hoping to take this to the Zoning Commission for a text amendment in a few months. And this was because of a request by the DC Zoning Commission and also in response to some issues that have been made to our attention by ANCs and residents at our Board of Zoning Adjustment public hearings. So the goals of this text amendment would be listed here, but essentially the primary goals here would be to include flexible new development that is compatible with existing neighborhoods. So we've seen a few cases where there are new development projects, apartment buildings that are being located, in an area that may or may not be primarily lower density development. And so we're making sure that whatever new development is being built in these zones is compatible with the surrounding context. And we also want to look at um, renovations and expansions of existing uses. So if a building in the RA1 zone wants to be expanded or renovated, they currently have to go to the Board of Zoning Adjustment. Um, And then we also want to look at uses permitted by right in the RA1 zone. So those uses that do not require special exception approval from the Board of Zoning Adjustment or the BZA. So next slide. All right, so just some background on the RA1 zone itself. The RA1 zone intends to permit flexibility in low to moderate density residential development ranging from detached houses to low-rise apartments. And so if we just take a look here at the map here on the screen, you'll see that in some wards, there's either little to no RA1 zoning, but in some scenarios, in some wards, such as Ward 5 or 7 or 8, you'll see a higher concentration of that. So this text amendment may or may not apply as much as it would for other wards. But again, all ANCs were invited tonight to provide feedback. Um, and currently, the RA1 zone permits one family detached and semi-detached dwellings by right, whereas new row homes, flats, and multi-family buildings require special exception review and approval by the BZA. um, as well as existing multifamily buildings. So if any existing multifamily buildings expand or have additions to their buildings, that does also require a special exception review by the BZA. And from here, I think I'll hand it over to Michael.
Yeah, so i- in our proposal, we're looking at making some minor changes to the development standards, solely only for residential development types in the RA1. We are not proposing any changes for any sort of non-residential development. Uh, Here, the next couple slides will be a table showing some of the existing development standards. Um, One of the things that will be new that we'll be introducing will be standards for row homes. We don't go into too much detail with that tonight, but primarily we're looking at how we can change the development standards to, as Shepard said, create allow projects to foster that will be better in their existing conditions. So for one of the biggest changes we're looking at doing is a change to side yards. Currently, there's a bit of a sliding scale on side yards when it comes to these multifamily developments, uh, which looks at a multitude of things, including the number of units per floor. Instead, we'll kind of be raising the minimum floor a bit per se when it comes to side yards, in how we will be requiring them to be placed moving forward. And as showing here, no other changes to either lot occupancy or any of the other development requirements will be proposed as of right now. Um, and then I'll turn it back to Shepard briefly to talk about, like I brought up, the row houses, the matter of right uses.
Right. So we've looked at design regulations in terms of uses permitted by right. So again, those uses that do not require review by the Board of Zoning Adjustments. So currently, within the RA1 zone, detached and semi-detached dwellings are permitted by right, whereas row dwellings and apartment houses do require BZA approval. And so we are examining this section and maybe thinking of making some potential changes to these uses that are permitted by right. Um, and so we're looking at including row dwellings, and apartment buildings that consist of no more than 4 units as uses permitted by right, and again, would not require BZA approval. However, any apartment buildings with more than 4 units would require BZA approval. And then next slide. And then we've also looked at, again, expansions and renovations of existing buildings. Currently, if there is an increase in the number of units in a building, in any building, essentially in the RA1 zone, so if it's a single family dwelling going to a flat, or an apartment building increasing the number of units, that requires BZA approval. Um, so we've considered allowing more flexibility for renovations to allow existing buildings to increase the number of units by 50% or 4 units, whichever is less to be allowed by right, and any units that exceed this allowance would require BZA approval. And then that's all I have for next slide. That's Michael.
Yeah, and with the request that we received from the zoning commission, one of the primary things for us to look at was there is the RA1's new residential development special exception process. As we briefly stated before, we will be tweaking it a little bit as to what falls under this review. But with that in mind, we will also be changing a bit the process itself in that we will clarify what will be the minimum submission requirements from applicants, as well as clarifying what it is the Board of Zoning Adjustment can ask of applicants when it comes to approving their projects. So some of the things we're considering, clarifying is building materials, design, and how it relates to either alignment of windows. between the proposal and the existing conditions, that being the surrounding either other apartment houses or in some cases single-family dwellings, locations of doors, exterior lighting, landscape grading, screening. A lot of these things are currently required now, but we were just looking to make sure that from a clarification standpoint, applicants understand from a get-go what it is that is required of them when they are wishing to seek this type of approval. Uh, Kind of broke out a little bit of what I just said in a little bit of a table kind of showing what the minimum application requirements are now on the left and what we're looking ultimately to make them on the right. And now I turn to Shepard for a brief timeline and process.
Yep. So, so here we have a proposed adoption timeline and process for this text amendment. So currently, as you see on the screen here, we're at the first stage in terms of outreach and engagement. So we're first meeting with all the A and C commissioners. We have 2 meetings for that. So one today and one Thursday at noon. Um, but essentially, we're looking for some initial feedback from the ANC commissioners, and then followed by that, starting tonight, essentially, we will open it up for public comment. So ANC commissioners, as well as just regular members from the public, can uh, submit comments via email at the email listed here, RA-1 text amendment at dc.gov. And they will come to both me and Michael, and we are able to respond to you if you have any comments. Um, and these also will be used and considered when we actually do submit our formal application, which we anticipate happening February. And then we'll have a application um, for this text amendment submitted to the Office of Zoning. Um, and this application will be available for viewing online. It's available for viewing through the ISIS website. Um, and then following the application submittal, we then go to the zoning commission set down. This is essentially an opportunity for the zoning commission to review the application to determine if this application is ready for a public hearing. And we hope to have that done by March. And following that, we then have to schedule a zoning commission public hearing date. Um, and this will be the opportunity for, again, ANC commissioners and the public to provide testimony at this hearing. If you sign up in advance, this is both accepted via written testimony and in-person testimony. But this will be the public hearing where the zoning commission will take a vote on this application. So that's the proposed timeline. Again, these dates are somewhat tentative, but we hope to stay on this schedule. And that's it for me for this.
So at this point, we'd like to open it up for questions. We do have the capabilities to unmute anyone who wants to either raise their hand or just put a question in chat. But the things we want to focus on a little bit as you think about your input are any of your experiences with the new developments that go through the current RA-1 special exception process, as well as any challenges or otherwise for developments. In the RA1 zone. So I see we have one question already. Give me 1 second. All right. Hi, Commissioner Edwards. You should be able to unmute yourself if you would like to speak, or we can just answer your question. It's up to you.
I can answer questions in the chat, and then whoever has a question verbally can do that also, so we can multitask here.
I see your question says, how does this relate to the comprehensive plan review? Do you mean the ongoing comprehensive plan effort?
Yes, the comprehensive plan effort, I believe there's going to be a revision this year, and a review, citywide review of the comprehensive plan. So how does this fit into that process? Thank you.
Yeah. So this, I guess our at this time, our idea is this will come before that process. Uh, like we said during our presentation, this text amendment, the reason we're looking at it is by request from the Zoning Commission. So that is specifically why we're initiating this effort, and not specifically related to the comprehensive plan.
But you are correct. You are correct, though. There is the comprehensive plan rewrite that's also occurring within our department, but it is following a different timeline and schedule. And I do believe that will take a significant more amount of time to complete compared to what we're trying to achieve with this project.
Alan, you had your hand raised.
Hi, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. I had a couple questions, but one was talked about with the comprehensive plan. Why is zoning exactly asking for this, and how does it also fall in place with the Duke plan as well?
Which plan did you say second?
The Duke plan layover.
Hi, maybe I can help take a stab at this answer. I'm Jennifer Steingasser. I'm the Deputy Director with the Office of Planning for Development Review, Historic Preservation. We're working under the existing comp plan with this particular text amendment. It will be consistent, obviously, going forward with the new one, but this is being driven by text in the existing comprehensive plan, the one that was just updated in 2021, I believe. So it'll be consistent with that. There is direction in that comp plan to look at this zone and make it an effort to make it easier to understand. And so we're basing this on our experience over the last couple of years with these cases and what we've heard from the ANCs, from the applicants, from the BZA. The issues that we've observed were difficult to express or understand through the applications. So it's not being driven by any one plan. So if there's RA-1 in the Duke, in the area covered by the Duke plan, then this would still be consistent with that.
Okay. Commissioner Kensick, did you have anything else you wanted to follow up with that question, or is that good for right now? I think we might have lost him. All right. I believe Commissioner Bishop Henchman, you had your hand raised next if you had your question still. Okay. All right. So our next question was, unless I missed any hands being raised, was from Commissioner Jacobson. I will unmute you now. So your question was, can you expand on why the Zoning Commission asked for this? In what way did the commission request this? The chair of the Zoning Commission brought this up several times, as Jennifer stated, kind of following off the comprehensive plan's recommendation to make some clarification changes to the RA-1. So it's just one of those things that we were asked repeatedly to take a look at, and felt strongly enough for us to work on it ahead of the comprehensive plan changes that will be coming.
Yeah,
Not
I'll
sure
add a little bit to that. Chairman Hood, the chairman of the Zoning Commission, sat on a few of these cases. The Zoning Commission rotates through the BZA. They sit on there on a rotating basis. And he was very frustrated with some of the lack of guidance and the existing vagary of the regulations. And he was also frustrated with what he was seeing as difficulty for the neighborhoods in reviewing these cases and understanding how the regulations worked. And so he very specifically and repeatedly asked us to move forward with examining these particular regulations and making any recommendations. So that's how it got started, and that's why we're proceeding.
Thank you so much. I guess, could you cite the comp plan section again? I might have misunderstood.
We could definitely follow up with you on that. We don't have it immediately on hand.
So what what we're looking for this evening is any thoughts or experiences you guys have had or observed or heard from your constituents about the RA1 and about the mix of typologies, how that development interacts with each other in existing neighborhoods. So we have some thoughts, as was presented earlier, based on what we've seen and experienced, but we're also looking forward to hearing from you any thoughts you have on this particular. And if you don't have it tonight, that there's no worry. This will go to the zoning commission. There'll be a full standard public hearing process. You'll have an opportunity to weigh in as the ANC, as individuals. You know, your constituents will as well. Right now, we just wanted to reach out to the ANCs initially before we take anything forward or formulate our final recommendations.
So it looks like we have a couple of hands raised, and if you've already asked your question, then feel free to lower it. But we have, I guess, like 4 questions. I guess let's start from Joe. Is it fair to say that the RA1 is supposed to allow apartments by right, but instead applicants are being directed to get special exceptions, which tie up you, us, and them? And this is intended to fix that? If not, what is a comprehensive plan policy goal this proposal is fulfilling? I think you hit the nail on the head with the first section. This zone is intended to allow up to apartments, low to moderate density apartments. Instead, we are receiving a number of cases that I feel the zoning commission feels that, really don't require sometimes a review. And Jennifer, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think that's one of the things that we were trying to address specifically is, are there certain scenarios or cases or projects that don't necessarily need to go to the BZA, just because either they're not proposing anything that's going to significantly alter or intensify the use within that on that property or within that area. But yes, I do think that's one of the things we are trying to address with that is just trying to see if there are areas that don't require as much attention or as much review when it comes to expansions or new development within the RA1 zone. And I hope that answered the question. And then let's go to Paula.
I already spoke if someone else wants to go ahead, but I have an experience to recount. So should I just go ahead?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. We had a case, it was case number 21065 at 13th Street. What was the address? Oh, heck, I had it right here. It was 13th Street Northwest, and it was an RA1 zone, 6108 13th Street Northwest. And it was an RA1 zone, and across 13th Street, I think, was mostly apartment buildings. And then on the other side of 13th Street were mostly single family homes. And one of the single family homes was being converted into a 9-unit, 26-bed apartment house. And the neighbors were upset about it because one of the developers said that soon all the single family homes would be so converted to these types of buildings. So that's just, I just wanted to recount my experience. I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's bad, but that's the kind of thing I guess that this would make easier. This was 9 units, so I assume this would fall outside of your um, parameters, but still that type of thing I think is going to happen more with this language. Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate that, and we'll go back and review that case record specifically.
And yes, and to that point, so again, something like this in that scenario, like you just mentioned, yeah, would still require a special exception review by the BZA, for 9 units. So uh, again, we are trying to make sure that we, set some limits to what again would be most impactful versus like what's not as impactful. And something like a 9 unit apartment again would trigger a BZA review. So yes. Let's go to Alex.
Yeah, hi. Well, first of all, I'm wondering, are you expecting this to be smooth sailing since it was requested by Chair Hood?
I'm sorry, repeat that one more time. Sorry.
Are you expecting this to go through smoothly, given that this was requested by Chair Hood?
Now, see, I don't know if we can answer that one right now, just because we don't,
Okay.
we don't know how they're going to take this. But we're trying to make sure that we do cover all bases in terms of outreach. Again, starting off with the ANCs and then heading out to the public. But I mean,
Yeah.
I do hope that this will, go smoothly. But
Okay.
I don't think it's just like a gavel is approved. I think they're gonna like take into consideration a lot more things. So I
Gotcha.
mean, yep.
And
Yep.
and on the engagement front with ANCs, just for reference, the first I heard about this was today when I got an email saying reminder. I think this went to like the inbox for like the whole ANC, which like I don't have access to. So it was also a little tricky to follow this today because I haven't been able to do any look into this in advance. I support this generally. I support making it easier to build apartments, but because I'm learning about this for the first time as the slides are going through, it was a little tricky to follow. And if you could like share the slides in the chat, for example, if you have a link, that would be really useful, just so that kind of at my own pace, I can look at that.
Yeah, so I shared the link for the website in the chat,
Okay.
and we will be posting this presentation on the website. I'm guessing by the end of tomorrow it should be uploaded,
Gotcha.
hopefully, or at least by Thursday. But for sure it'll be on the website.
Thanks.
Yep. And then another question from Josh.
Yeah, thanks again so much for answering all these questions. I guess, can you expand why this is only about RA-1 zones? It seems like this is in areas of the district that are already mostly meeting their housing production goals. So I'm just curious, why RA-1 when there are a lot of other places that seem to need more housing?
Well, specifically, the RA-1 zone allows for a mix of typologies, which can create this tension that Ms. Edwards was referring to, where one side of the street is row houses, is single family detached, and the other side of the street fronting is apartments. And while the zone anticipates that kind of interaction, it can be tense. And so we're looking to find a way to address criteria that can alleviate some of that tension, such as alignment of windows and doors and simple design things that can make those typologies extremely compatible. It's not that we've singled out one area over the other, but this particular zone is a unique zone in that it does allow all of those types of residential structures in one block. And so we're just looking for ways to alleviate some of the conflict that we've seen over the years when these cases come forward.
Okay, thank you. I have a lot of other questions, but I don't want to hog it. So if there are other people that have questions that
Okay.
they want to ask. I guess one other question. Are you asking for suggestions on how to change the RA1 zone or just feedback on this proposed amendment? I'm not really sure like what the specifics you're looking for here.
Well, we haven't published any particular text amendment proposal yet. So yes, if you have ideas, we'd like to hear them. You know, we just thought it would be advantageous to come out early before we make a recommendation and hear from the elected ANCs what your experience is. So yeah, we're interested in hearing it.
I guess have you given thought to doing this for, you know, R1A and R1B zones? Because there's a lot of housing that could be built in the upper Northwest and they're not really meeting housing production goals in the upper Northwest in DC. So why not also look at R1A and R1B?
Well, this is not as broad. We're looking at where this zone in particular is mapped. We're not changing we're not rezoning any properties to or from this zone. We're just looking at how this zone works in particular. So we're just working off of what we've observed and what the zoning commission specifically asked us to look at, which is this particular zone.
Right. And then to add to that, this is the one zone that does require, again, BZA review and approval for new development. So that's I think one of the primary reasons why this zone is a little unique, is because it requires that special review for any new development or specific projects.
And what you're looking for, I think, regarding the distribution of housing and affordable housing throughout the city is really going to be addressed more holistically through the comprehensive plan rewrite, which is going to be kicked off very soon, the next couple weeks. But that's taking a much more holistic look at housing and the housing equity issues throughout the city.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. I just realized I was on mute. I'm still thinking through this, but I appreciate all the answers.
And then, Alex, do you have another question or maybe not? I think his hands is just still raised.
No, I think
sorry.
My hand wasn't put down.
Okay.
There.
All right, perfect. And then we did have one other comment in the chat here, Joe, in regards to public outreach. So while we're talking, there really ought to be more defined public outreach process standard for zoning text and map amendments. Any chance that's being considered? I don't think so for this particular project. I do know that we will go before the zoning commission for the set down, which is the first encounter with the zoning commission, and we will explain our outreach process to them at that point. And there's an opportunity for the zoning commission to ask questions about outreach there. If there's a need for more outreach, we definitely will do that if that's what's determined at that phase. But I think we're doing our best here to make sure that we are trying to touch, on multiple levels of outreach, and again, starting with the ANCs and then again out to the public. But that's, unless Jennifer, Joel, Michael, anyone else have anything else to add to that one? I think that's our approach for this particular project.
Right. There is in the zoning regulations, there is a prescribed public notice process that's covered by the Administrative Procedures Act in DC. And that has to do with, so many days of notice within 200 feet. The ANC has so many days to weigh in. This is in addition to that. We're reaching out beforehand, before we even start into that prescribed system. So it's just kind of customized based on what the case is or what the text is, and what we're trying to hear.
So we had another question here from Peter. Is OP considering altering or eliminating the requirement for BZA review? The answer is no. I think that what we're trying to do is weed out, again, those projects that either in some scenarios would increase the intensity of the use or the building footprint. And in scenarios like that, we're considering maybe not having those go before BZA for review. But if a new development comes about and they're proposing to increase by over 4 units, then that would trigger a BZA review, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we're trying to establish enough criteria up front that some of the issues that get brought up in a public hearing can be preempted, right? So that we draw attention to the fact that the alignment, that they need to take into account alignment of windows. They need to take into account placement of the trash receptacles. I think things like that can make the hearings go much faster and can be accommodated through the matter of right process. Right now, there's just really no guidelines, and the BZA seems at times uncomfortable being too assertive, or it seems uncomfortable because of that lack of guidelines. So we're hoping that if we can get enough guidelines and design elements into the regulations, people can think about these things before they go public, and therefore the hearings will be a lot faster for those projects that are. And a lot of projects end up in front of the BZA that don't need to be, where they're just finishing out space that already exists in the basement. They're changing a 2-bedroom to 2 studios, and it has no impact on the exterior of the building, but it's still required to go to the BZA. And that kind of is considered a barrier to housing, and we're trying to look for ways to alleviate those as well.
And then Peter, did you have any more comments or questions? Okay. And just reading through the comments here. Let's see, we have a comment from Kyle. Wanted to express strong support for this as well, and hope to see further expansion of these types of efficiencies for other areas, as Josh mentioned. And then Joe added, I guess I'll add that this seems like a no-brainer, and if anything, it's not ambitious enough. By right, projects in the proper zone shouldn't require special exceptions, which are costly to everyone involved. Agreed. Um, and then Josh, you have another comment or question?
I do actually. Yeah, thanks again. I guess something that I've struggled a lot with as an ANC, and something I've been trying to think through, is like, we have a lot of things that come to the ANC for our review before they go to BZA that honestly I don't think are that important and don't really rile any neighbors up, but they end up taking a longer time for the developer to get through the process, which means it takes longer for houses to be built, and we're having an affordability crisis in DC. So I guess, like, really my question boils down to, has OP ever studied or thought about studying, how BZA review impacts housing production?
We haven't done a study that focused, but we're certainly aware of the delay and the cost of delays. And when somebody has to hold a property for 6 months while they go through this process, that's 6 months of interest and land payments that they're making on, and that just gets passed on. So we're well aware of that barrier, and we are looking for ways through this text amendment for this zone, and we are looking at, in general, the mayor has tasked us to look at any kind of barriers to housing as they come up. And so those are, we're aware of that and appreciate your keeping the issue alive. And if you come up with any ideas anytime on any subjects, we're happy to hear them.
I mean, yeah, I guess I already said my idea of we should be increasing, zoning throughout the city and making it easier to build generally. And I think especially in places in the city that historically have not built to the level that they need to. And a lot of that is in the upper Northwest, but I would volunteer that Ward 1 can and should build more. And I think a lot of my neighbors would agree with that.
Okay.
But thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gosselin, are you trying to weigh in? No? Okay. Well, we don't have anything more at this time to present. We just wanted to get out, talk to the elected commissioners first, get your early feedback. Commissioner Kensick? Commissioner Kensick, did you want to weigh in on something? You're on mute.
No, they just took me off mute. I appreciate it. No, I just actually really wanted to thank you because as this is going on my third term, I haven't actually seen this much proactiveness, actually getting some feedback from us on the ground, also giving us time to speak to some of our constituents in lieu of Thursday's meeting. So thank you guys for taking the time and doing this tonight. It's really important and I like the communication. Appreciate you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
It's really Michael and Shepard have been leading that.
Well,
All right.
I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. Last chance going once.
That's not true.
But I mean, we still have 15 minutes left, so feel free to type in your comments or thoughts or raise your hand quickly. But again, we do have the website, which again is in the chat. So feel free to visit that. You are more than welcome to shoot us an email if you have any other thoughts following this meeting, or if you hear anything from your constituents, feel free to share their opinions or their thoughts too. But
And then we have the meeting coming up on Thursday at around in the middle of the afternoon, middle of the day. And then of course there'll be other, there'll be public hearings. The ANCs always get advance notice of any text amendment before it goes to the commission for hearing dates. So, and then we always welcome your feedback. So we appreciate you taking the time this evening.
Yep. Well,
okay.
I think we conclude a little bit early tonight, but again, thank you so much for joining us. And again, give us some feedback. We're always here, so thank you.
Have a good night.
Good night.